Welcome everyone to Have History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder Historian, and the patrons on Patreon voted for me to animate a segment of the First Battle of Manassas. If you would like to support the channel through Patreon, the link is in the description below. Also, I have some really cool Civil War themed t-shirt designs in the Teespring store. Its link is also in the description. With that being said, let's jump right into the battle. Two Confederate armies were converging on the Union Army of Northeastern Virginia, commanded by Irvin McDowell, along Bull Run, at the end of July 1861. General P.G.T. Beauregard commanded the Confederate Army of the Potomac, and General Joseph E. Johnston commanded the Army of the Shenandoah. Beauregard's army had formed up along Bull Run and wanted Johnston to approach the Union Army from the west, slamming into their flank in a surprise attack. However, miscommunication combined with the fact that Johnston outranked Beauregard made the plan fizzle out. Beauregard, waiting on the reinforcements from the Shenandoah Valley, placed Colonel Nathan Evans' small brigade on the extreme left of his line, guarding the stone bridge over Bull Run. Hoping to outflank the rebels, McDowell ordered the division of Colonel David Hunter, consisting of two brigades commanded by Colonels Andrew Porter and Ambrose Burnside, to march northwest to Sudley Ford, and then attack the Southerners' left flank along the Manassas-Sudley Road. Opposing the single brigade of Evans was two Union brigades under Brigadier General Robert Schenck and Colonel William T. Sherman. The two sides fired on one another on the morning of July 21st, but no one ventured to bring an engagement. All the while, Porter and Burnside attempted to outflank Evans, but a guide who was supposed to lead them to the Confederate flank led them on a 12-mile march when a more direct route could have been taken. Instead of arriving on the flank at around 7:30 a.m., Burnside didn't reach it until after 9:30 a.m. Evans caught wind of what was happening and left 4 companies of the 4th South Carolina at the Stone Bridge and took the other 6 companies along with the 1st Louisiana Battalion to meet the foe, but underestimated the flanking maneuver that the Union brigades were carrying out by going to the north just a short distance. But when he saw the columns of blue troops moving down the road, he quickly readjusted his line to Matthews Hill to confront the approaching Federals. Burnside deployed the 2nd Rhode Island against Evans. When the Confederates leveled their weapons and fired into the blue ranks, the inexperienced Union soldiers dropped to the ground to avoid the hail of lead. Burnside and Porter's men had marched for over 7 hours and were exhausted. The Rhode Islanders' fight with the Louisianians and the South Carolinians was used to rest the other units for about 30 minutes. The Rhode Island Regiment's commander, Colonel John Slocum, boldly exposed himself atop a fence to observe the rebel positions and was hit 3 times, one of the balls striking his head and carving a groove on his scalp from front to back. Captain William H. Reynolds moved his battery into position behind and to the right of the 2nd Rhode Island and delivered constant fire from their 6 guns. At the moment, Evans's 900 men opposed nearly 15,000 Union troops coming down the Sudley-Manassas Road, if only the blue troops were deployed. In the confusion, some South Carolinians were positioned behind the Louisianians and fired into their backs, injuring at least 2 men. The men from Louisiana returned the favor, but quickly the 2 regiments turned their rifles against the enemy. Hunter, frustrated with Burnside's delay, ordered Porter to deploy his troops, but Porter misunderstood the order and thought he was supposed to support Burnside, so he took up a position behind the engaged brigade. Around this time, Hunter was wounded and left the field, but he put Burnside in command of the division, who threw his regiments in piecemeal against the enemy. He sent the 2nd New Hampshire to the west side of the road, where they did nothing to help the 2nd Rhode Island in their fight against Evans. The 71st New York were taking too long to get their lines formed to go into battle. To the south, elements of Bees and Bartow's brigade occupied Henry Hill. Some of the men began to climb Mrs. Henry's apple tree to acquire some of the fruit, but Reynolds' artillery began throwing shells in their direction, and the men quickly slid down the tree. One Georgian wrote, "This is so unfair. I didn't come out here to fight this way. I wish the earth would crack open and let me drop in." Burnside ordered the 1st Rhode Island into battle and for the 2nd Rhode Island to move to the left to make room for its sister regiment. Those 2 regiments engaged with the Evans men in a prolonged fight. The Confederate brigade commander began to worry that he couldn't hold Matthews Hill against the overwhelming numbers now bearing down on him. He decided to try to even the situation by taking out the artillery. He ordered Major Wheat to charge Reynolds' battery, but the enfilading fire from the 1st Rhode Island forced him to move to the west across the road to get to safety. Now Evans badly needed help from the 4 regiments behind him on Henry Hill. General Bee relented coming to his aid because he wanted Evans to fall back to Henry Hill, a location he deemed more defensible. But in the end, Bee led the 4th Alabama to the 4th South Carolina's right and quickly realized he needed more troops. The 8th Georgia and 2nd Mississippi quickly joined their embattled comrades, with the 7th Georgia in reserve on the Warrenton Turnpike in the dip between Matthews and Henry Hill. The roar of battle consumed these regiments. One Georgian wrote, "Seemingly 1,000 rifles were flashing and the air was alive with the whistling bullets. Men were dropping at my right and left. I could hear the balls striking our boys, and I saw many of them fall forward, some groaning in agony, others dropping dead without a word." Burnside needed reinforcements of his own and ordered Porter to send him the United States Infantry Battalion, a group of Army regulars under Major George Sykes. The fresh troops moved to the left of the 2nd Rhode Island, and after a lackluster first volley, delivered devastating rounds into the 8th Georgia, who began to give way. Bee convinced some of the men to stay and fight, but the regiment was falling apart. When the rest of Porter's brigade formed on the west side of the road and pressured the Confederate left, the Confederates gave way under the mountain pressure. The last to move off the field was the 4th Alabama, who, seeing a section of gray-clad troops approach them from the east, mistook them for Confederates and moved toward them. It was actually Sherman's brigade, who had splashed across an unknown ford north of the Stone Bridge and was deploying on the field. A volley from Sherman's men sent the Alabamians toward Henry Hill. To see what happened next, check out my animated battle map of Henry Hill. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day.
Historian, historian, where do you roam? Historian, historian, far, far from home. If history will travel, reads the card of a man, a professor with knowledge in the heartland. To educate the world is his mission. A professor of fortune is a man called historian. Historian.